artists, we're coming into our last week. So I'm going to run you through kind of what's set up in the module for this week. We essentially have a few deadlines coming up, and we're also working with the new media. So what does that mean? I sent out a message earlier today because I didn't get everyone's request for the artist for the presentation, and so you're gonna see a message going out to you this week on that. Another thing is we have your reading is a little bit more shorter this week. You don't have a sketchbook assignment, so you have your museum artwork presentation, which is an infographic and a video. The infographic is meant to be like really short text, not long, like don't put in paragraphs, really short texts. And then a video that just kind of walks us through, or walks me through, what did you find in your research, right? And then what we're working with that is, so you got that going on. You also have a shape, so like going into shape, what is ink? And then I have a video that's kind of just for your enjoyment on making bamboo pens, but you do not need to make that for any assignment. It's kind of like additional information if you wanted to make your own tools. And then we have 2 exercises in ink, and then we have our portrait project. So yeah, this is definitely probably going to be your heavier week if you didn't get any like preliminary work done on the artist presentation last week. Then I've kind of confirmed with other people that had sent in things, and so they can get ahead and start working on that. So if you're piling everything into this week, it's going to be a rough week for you. But the good news is it's over after this week. So at least you won't, you're at the finish line is what I'm trying to get at. The things to think about, I do have grades due next Wednesday. That is not a deadline I can change. It's usually the Wednesday after the week of finals, and this is kind of considered your finals week. So we go all the way up to Thursday. I have a deadline of Thursday, but there's a little bit of fudge room there, so I'll take that into account because I understand it is a little bit shorter than what we normally have. But I can't, if you have something that's turned in on Sunday, it's kind of iffy for getting that graded in time. So in other words, try to meet that deadline, and I'll work with you on it. Just reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Going into breaking down this week, let's go from start to finish. So going into the museum artwork, I added this 1-point assignment so that way it's on your radar that, hey, I need to actually select an artist for this. And so what you do is you go to the Uffizi Museum. I think I already talked about this one. You go through, select an artwork, etc. I mentioned work only with 2-dimensional artworks. Do not do sculptures. So like the Medici Venus, bad choice for this one. But a painting, a drawing, even a print or printmaking, totally fine. Those are all okay. Some books I would steer clear of that. So I'd stick to painting and then the prints and drawings. I think that's a pretty safe bet for this class because it is a drawing class, right? But drawings are often preliminary works for a painting. Or for a sculpture or for architecture. So it's like it's kind of getting that idea out of your head and onto paper. It's only in recent years where drawings, I would say, is being considered like the final piece. So that's actually a newer thing as far as like the longevity of art goes. Drawings would usually be like preparation work for later. These artworks have already been selected by your classmates, so you can't pick any of those. So that's why I recommend like you have like 3 selections. So when you go to the office form, it's pretty self-explanatory. Name, if you're going to work with a group, okay, who's in your group, your first choice, second choice, and then all the details for each one, and then any questions for me, and then that's pretty much it. You submit that, and then I have this list, so then I'll check off your name as it's done. The actual assignment, you have some extra credit opportunities for this. So if it was me and this was the last week of class, I would reach out today on Monday, or I'd reach out on Tuesday morning to try to schedule an appointment with a tutor, and you can get some extra credit for that. Or you can reach out to the librarian and say, I'm doing this artist, I'm not sure which, is there any resources you can help me for researching the artist? And then they'll link you, like they'll actually send, follow up with the email. If you call them or talk to them, you're probably going to get a better result than doing an email, just because it's on their radar. They know to look out for your email and that you have a certain timeline. So I would kind of recommend doing a little bit of both, because you're in the last week of class. If this was, last week, then you would have enough time, but we're getting down to the wire. So you have two parts. There's an infographic, right? So I have an example down here. So you can't do this artist, Supper with the Lute Player. This is, I think, Gerrit van Honthorst. But you can see here that the infographic is meant to be almost like a really short slide. Notice there isn't long paragraphs of text in the whole thing. They're really like short snippets. And your video, and this is an example of a team that worked together, so that's why their video is a little bit longer, because both of them are participating. But they walk us through what they found in their research, and then explaining where they saw things. And they integrated art terminology. So in your video and or your infographic, do integrate that art terminology. Show me that you are learning things. If there's something in there like you see implied line, go ahead and describe where you see it, or have their use of color or contrast or any of those sort of things. So that video is in there for you for your access. And reference, so you have an idea of what it could look like. It's a newer project that I've been working with so this is actually the first semester we actually have examples of it, because it's something I've been experimenting with in the past year. So for the bamboo pens, this is on your notes, right? So your notes, you have the shape, what is ink and art, and bamboo pens. This is an excerpt out of that beginning drawing atelier. And it's just a couple pages, 8 pages, but it's mostly pictures, right? Very short reading. And it's, how to visualize shape within a natural object. How do you break that down? And that's helpful for thinking about ink, because when you paint with ink or any sort of wet media, you're actually painting in the water in a shape, and then you're adding the ink onto it. So I have a little Zoom session here that I recorded for past a different class, and it was just how to work with ink. And so it gives you some basics and what to expect and what things to anticipate, so that way you're not surprised by the media. This one is Alfonso. He has some really great pen and ink tutorials. So if you like working, what he has here is a pen nib. If you like working with a pen nib, definitely check his stuff out. The last one is on Sumi ink, and you have a Sumi brush. If you have that in your kit, experiment with it. If you don't have it, any sort of acrylic painting brush will work, or a watercolor brush. If you don't have a brush, there's other ways to work with this, but it will be easier with having a brush and some sticks, almost for combining to make it work with the actual assignment. You'll see what I mean. So going into bamboo pens, this was a video that Donna and I worked on, but we're kind of cut, these are 4 minutes. They're probably about a total of 12 minutes. They're in sections, so you can kind of watch them as you go, or you can watch them while you're working. This is, it's just kind of how do I actually do it? And it takes you through a step-by-step of how to make your own bamboo pen. Because they'll charge you $20 for those in the store, minimum $10. I've seen those, I saw them in Italy being sold for X amount, and I see them out here being sold for X amount. So they do charge you quite a bit, and if you have access to green, fresh bamboo, you're in luck for making your own tools. The working with ink, you're going to have a sheet here. Do not print this out. Just do it in your sketchbook. So an example of that is, that's a printed out, which I don't want you to do. Try this in your sketchbook. So just freehand it, like you did with the first assignment. The only difference here is you're working with ink and you're not working with pencil. So I want you to practice everything with ink. This is an experimental sheet, so you can get comfortable with the media. And then, right, I want you to write a response of what that was like. Then I want you to do a larger drawing, preferably on mixed media paper. That mixed media paper is really meant for wet media. Some of you might work with this and say, you know what, I'd rather do this for the portrait project, this material. So some of you might choose charcoal, some of you might choose pencil, some of you might choose ink, some of you might mix all three together, and that's okay for the final for that last project. You have pretty much free form on how to work with the media. I'm not going to be too restrictive on that, so it doesn't have to be graphite. You can use any sort of material you'd like that is a drawing material. So things that would be not allowable would be acrylic paint or oil paint, right? Because that would be a painting class. And so I want to make sure that you are sticking to the true techniques that you find in drawing. So these are some example videos of ink washes working with the wet on wet technique. And that just means that you have wet water, right? And then as the water is wet, it bleeds. So if you drop a little bit of ink on there, see how it kind of bleeds? So it's going into the capillaries of both the paper and the water and spreading out. So they're kind of doing this, they're kind of working freehand by just playing with it, see what it does. And then when it gets to a certain effect, then they see something in the image and then draw it out and make more details out of it. Paper towels or cotton is really good to have on hand. Notice how they're blotting the paper. So that's something to keep in mind as far as like resources when you're working with this. That's called a wet on wet technique. Some of these other ones are washes where you're just kind of applying. So that's a good example of wet on wet. These other ones are kind of more taking a drawing technique, right? And then applying light washes. So you might have like, if you have any old plastic containers that you can use for art, or a glass, things that clean easily from India ink would be a glass material or ceramic. So those things you should be able to clean those thoroughly and still reuse them for food. But if you have something that you're discarding in the recycling, those would work also. So that's just something to think about. I want you to combine a wash technique with line, right? So these are all washes. All the grays in there are done by making a wash, and that means water plus ink. And it's a little bit of ink to a lot of water. And then this is a wet on wet technique. It's missing the line component, but I think it is a nice wet on wet technique. So I would maybe don't do solely wet on wet. Like this would be nice if you went back into it and did some fine line work after it dries. So combination of those two, right? So things that you can try out in there, crosshatch, mark making, some of the stuff you might have learned from the worksheet on the previous assignment. You want to incorporate at least 4 levels of gray, and that should be good. Your portrait as a narrative, you're going to be completing this one. This one, mainly what you're trying to do is a portrait with a story. So I'll get you your feedback by the end of the day on Tuesday for anything that, if you need something immediate, contact me tonight and I'll get on it tonight. But I'm going to take a quick look and see if I can answer. I'm going to answer as many as I can this afternoon and then get you feedback for the portrait. But it should all be completed by noon tomorrow, no later than noon on Tuesday. From there, I would, main thing is try not to blow it up too much. So some of these are kind of really large portrait studies. I think if you zoom out a little bit, like, this figure in the box, this figure with some allows for some environment. So I would say like it's okay to shrink your figure a little bit, and it doesn't have to be realistic. I prefer that it's not manga, but try, and the reason is, we want it to look kind of like you or the person that you're drawing, right? So try not to get it too much into an avatar. Do try to get it like an illustration or semi I'm not going to say photorealistic. I think that's taking it too extreme. But I think it should look like you, right? Or like the person that you're studying. It should be someone that you know and not a fictional character or something like that. There's different ways of approaching it, but I think that's spelled out here. The other section for your critique, there is a little bit of a prompt here. So if you listen to this audio comment, this will give you an idea of what I'm talking about for your introduction. I want you to pretend you are the evaluator or the instructor, and how would you judge this assignment? Like after doing the assignment, how would you think, what's the best way to grade this? How would you grade this? And then you're going to take that, and then you're going to evaluate one of your peers' work with what you said is the best way to evaluate it. So for example, if I thought, well, after this, I really felt like using symbolism and getting to the portrait to look semi-realistic to the photo reference was sort of like the two main goals. Then I would take that, review my own work, and then I go look at someone else's work and use the same two criteria. So whatever your criteria is, that's how you evaluate another person. The trick on this one is this should be an audio comment, right? So I want you to speak. I want to hear your voice. I want to see how you talk about another person's work. In the art department, we're kind of looking at not only how you write about other people's work, but how do you speak? Because often when we do critiques, they're in person and the person's right in front of us and we're talking to a colleague and just having a natural conversation about the work. So it doesn't need to be too formal. I'd rather you do not read directly from a paragraph. Now, if that helps you for notes, that's okay. Like if you're trying to remember your talking points, that's fine. But really, I'd like this to be natural. I'd like you to have maybe some talking points, making sure you're touching on certain aspects of their work. But I'd like this to be in a natural, like conversational form. This is roughly about a minute, and that's pretty much it. For the last little bits, things you should know about on the module. I mentioned before, or a couple weeks ago, that it'd be integrating the extra credit that's been open for the past few weeks for the July. And then I added a second one that's the Kai July. So this one's a different drawing challenge. This is kind of more like Kai June. There's Kai June and Kai July. So that's sort of the concept is if you think about Godzilla, that would be a kaiju. Right? That's sort of the concept. Sort of this like fictional large monster. The other two extra credits, I'll go ahead and pull those back up. So you kind of got some opportunities for some extra points. There's the tutor consultation. So if you use that with your artist presentation / or museum paper, it's really a presentation. That would be one. You can also reach out to the library. And that could be another opportunity for extra credit. And then there's also the two drawing challenges. And just take a look at those and see if either one of those would fit for you. A little bit longer on this one than the previous recordings, but I just wanted to make sure that you had a pretty good, thorough idea of what we're working with this week. That pretty much wraps it up. There's been a really tremendous amount of growth I've seen in like a large number of the drawings from your like earlier work to this, this short 6-week period. So I do hope that, these sort of techniques are adding to your skill set and allow you to have a little more confidence when you're working with drawing as a media. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, of course. There might be one switch on I have one switch for tomorrow's session, so I'm going to maybe try a couple days this week to give you some opportunities for asking questions. I'll be moving the Tuesday 4 to 6 to Wednesday, and then I'll do another morning shift in case people are needing something in the morning. Maybe Thursday morning around 10 o'clock, I'll try getting online for you in case you wanted to drop in and ask a question. So if you have any particular suggestions, feel free to reach out to me and I'll look into that. All right. You can always meet with me individually at any time this week. So feel free to reach out. All right. Talk to you soon. Take care and we'll be in touch.